The fluorescent hum of Skyline Memorial Hospital never really stopped. At 3 a.m, it soaked into the ceiling tiles and linoleum, a low vibration under the beeps of monitors. Outside Denver lay under a dusting of snow. Inside the emergency department glowed in flat, sleepless light. In the supply room, Dr. Erin Walker stacked boxes on a steel shelf. Gloves, gauze, Aubrey catheters, each row straight, each label facing out. She moved quickly, hands finding what they needed without a second look. Her scrubs were the washed-out blue everyone wore. Her hands did not look like anyone else's. Pale scars crossed her knuckles and the back of her wrist. When she lifted a carton, the tendon stood out, then eased as she slid it into place. Pick up, turn, slide. The motion had the rhythm of something she had done 1,000 times. The door opened behind her with a soft whoosh. Cooler hallway air slipped in with the smell of burned coffee. "You reorganizing the universe again, Dr. Walker?" Dr. Alan Mercer stepped inside with a foam cup. His badge hung crooked on his coat. He took a sip, grimaced, and drank anyway. "Just the parts that fall apart," Erin said. She did not turn from the shelf. Mercer leaned against the opposite rack. "I figured they would keep you stuck in chart review a while longer," he said. "Thought the committee was still chewing on your judgment call." The pause on judgment call was small but sharp. "They needed the crash carts restocked," Erin replied. "Important work." His mouth twitched. "Try not to hurt anyone with the tape." He meant it as a joke. It slid past her. The hum of the vents filled the quiet when she did not answer. After a moment, he tipped his cup toward her. "Do not disappear on us, he said. "The residents still need someone to fix their crooked stitches." He left. The door closed with a soft hiss. Erin placed the last box, then stepped back and let her eyes run over the shelves. Supplies lined up in neat rows settled in her head like a map. If someone yelled for a 7.5 tube, she could reach it in the dark. In the corner, a red crash cart sat with its drawers half open, raided and left. Syringe wrappers stuck up at odd angles. A laryngoscope handle lay without a blade. She pulled the top drawer out, dumped the mess onto the counter, and rebuilt it. Vials in rows, syringes straight. A fresh blade clicked into the handle with a small flash of light before she slid it into place. When she shoved the drawer home, the cart looked ready. That was enough. The overhead speaker cracked, then found its voice. "Code Blue Trauma 3, Code Blue Trauma 3. The words cut through the background noise. Erin had both hands on the cart before the second call finished. She pushed it into the hall wheels, rattling over the threshold, then smoothing on the waxed floor. Her stride was fast and straight, just short of a run. By the time she reached Trauma 3, the room was full. A man in his late 50s lay on the bed, chest bare, skin the color of old wax. Electrodes dotted his ribs. Wires climbed to a monitor full of jagged movement. "V-fib," a resident said. He lost his pulse in the rig. Mercer stood at the head of the bed with gloved hands near the airway. Sweat shone at his hairline. He did not look up when Erin locked the cart in place. "Charge to 200, he said. "Get me another line." Erin stopped just outside the cluster of bodies around the bed. From there, she could see the monitor clearly. The rhythm tearing across the screen was not the chaotic swirl of simple ventricular fibrillation. The QRS complexes looked twisted, stretched. On the paper strip sliding from the machine, the QT interval ran almost into the next beat. "That is Torsades," she said, voice even. "He needs magnesium before you shock again." Mercer kept his eyes on the paddles. "Charging," he said. "Everyone clear?" Hands lifted from the patient. The resident stepped back. Erin stayed where she was not touching the bed or rails. The defibrillator whined, then snapped. "Clear!" The man's body jerked. The monitor blipped, stuttered, then climbed back into disordered spikes. "Still V-fib," the resident called. Erin watched the numbers in the corner of the screen. The heart rate counter flickered. The blood pressure readout stayed blank. "Magnesium 2 grams, she said. "Now, Dr. Walker, I have it," Mercer snapped. "We are following ACLS protocol." On the far side of the bed, Nurse Linda Morales looked up from the medication cart. Gray threaded her dark hair. She met Erin's gaze for a fraction of a second. "Mag is drawn," Linda said. "No point letting it sit." Her tone was mild. Her hands were not. She uncapped the syringe, checked the line, and pushed the medication into the IV port in one smooth motion. The next half-minute stretched. The only sounds were the hiss of air from the bag valve mask and the shrill alarm. On the monitor, the wild rhythm shuddered, then pulled in. The spikes narrowed into cleaner complexes. The alarm cut off and came back as spaced beeps. The cuff on the man's arm inflated and deflated with a soft whir. Numbers appeared beside the green letters, a pressure, a pulse. "Sinus rhythm," the resident whispered. Mercer let out a slow breath. "Good work, everyone," he said. "Textbook ACLS." He stripped off his gloves and tossed them into the trash, already turning toward the computer. He never looked toward the doorway where Erin stood. The crowd around the bed thinned. Someone wiped gel from the man's chest. Someone adjusted the oxygen. The sharp tension in the air eased. Erin watched the man's chest rise twice on its own. Then she turned back to the cart. An empty ampule lay crushed near the wheel, a torn glove hung from the rail. She picked them up and dropped them into the red biohazard bin as she left. The hum of the hospital filled the hallway again as she pushed the crash cart back toward the supply room, steady and indifferent. By 6:30, the sky outside had shifted from black to a thin kind of gray, the color Denver wore before the sun decided if it wanted to commit. The snow on the parking deck roof looked blue in the early light. Inside, the emergency department smelled of alcohol wipes and the stale corner of last night's coffee. The pace slowed into that small lull before the first wave of day shift arrived. Erin finished logging the restocked cart in the computer fingers, moving over the keys without really needing to look. Her badge pinged at the door into the main corridor. She fell into the current, moving toward the elevators. People walked with takeaway cups in hand, talking in low voices, eyes heavy, but already scanning charts on their phones. The conference room for morning briefing sat just off the main administrative hallway. Fluorescent panels buzzed above a long laminate table. A tray of pastries drooped at one end, the kind that came in bulk boxes and all tasted faintly of cardboard and sugar. The coffee in the great metal urn had been sitting at least an hour. Erin took a chair near the back wall where she could see the door and the screen at the front both. She wrapped her hands around a paper cup for the warmth and did not drink. Dr. Helen Brooks, chief of medicine, stood at the podium beside the screen. Her blazer strained at the shoulders. Her hair, once carefully blown out, had surrendered to the humidity inside the building. She shuffled a stack of printed slides, then clicked the mouse. "All right, people, let us get through this. It has been a long night." The first slide lit up with bullet points about overtime caps, staffing ratios, reimbursement rates. Words like utilization and audit floated over the room. Phones came out. Thumbs moved a few. Residents nodded politely while their eyes drifted out of focus. Erin kept hers on the screen. Not because she was interested, because it was easier than looking at the faces around her. Some turned toward her, some turned away too quickly. "Administration has concerns about our narcotic dispensing numbers," Brooks said. "There will be new documentation requirements for controlled substances. I know it is tedious. We do not have much choice about it." Soft groans rustled through the room. Charts would doubtless take longer. No one suggested those requirements could wait. Brooks clicked again. A slide labeled Incident Review appeared with a line item under it. Trauma Intake Protocols, Pediatric I-70 Rollover. Erin felt her spine straighten another millimeter. The cup between her hands grew heavier. Brooks went on. "We will be reviewing that in detail next week. For now, we need to remember that every deviation from protocol carries risk, no matter the outcome." She said it without looking in any particular direction, and for a second, Erin could almost believe she was not the target. Then Dr. Richard Lang, sitting in the front row, shifted in his chair. Even from the back, he had a kind of presence. The thick silver hair, the navy tie, the posture that never slouched. He did not need to tap a microphone to get attention. When he stood, conversation ebbed on its own. "Thank you, Helen," he said. "If I may add something." Brooks stepped aside with a small, relieved nod. Lang clasped his hands loosely in front of him. "We have a reputation here," he said. "Skyline Memorial is a teaching hospital and a trauma center. People trust us because we have standards of care and we follow them." He let that hang for a beat. "I am hearing a disturbing enthusiasm among some of our staff for improvisation, for doing what feels right in the moment rather than what years of data tell us is safe." A couple of heads turned almost against their will. One resident glanced back over his shoulder, then looked quickly away when he met Erin's eyes. Lang's tone stayed smooth. Only the faint tightening at the corner of his mouth gave away anything sharper. "This is not a field station," he said. "We are not in a tent with rockets dropping in the next valley. We are in a facility with the resources and the time to follow evidence-based protocols." The words slid under Erin's skin like cold water. For half a second, the hum of the room dropped beneath something else, a memory of canvas walls and the thud of impacts you did not hear so much as feel. "We cannot have individuals deciding their judgment outweighs the system," Lang continued. "Well-meaning or not, that kind of thinking exposes this hospital to serious liability. It undermines the chain of command our residents need to learn. It puts us all at risk." He did not say her name. He did not have to. The people in the room had heard enough in corridors and nurses' stations. Erin kept her face slack, her shoulders square. Under the table, her fingers tapped an invisible rhythm into the cardboard cup. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. 1, 2, release. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. "We are reviewing recent incidents," Lang said. "Until that is complete, I expect everyone in this room to adhere to established procedure. If you have a concern with that, my door is open." He smiled a public smile and sat. The meeting shifted back to updates about flu season and hand hygiene campaigns. People started whispering again. Pens scratched. A phone rang once and was silenced. When Brooks finally dismissed them, chairs scraped and the air filled with the soft rustle of people rearranging themselves for another day. Erin waited until the bulk of the crowd had filed out before she stood. In the hallway, the fluorescent light felt harsher. She tossed her untouched coffee in the trash and walked toward the elevator's steps, measured, not quite slow. Dr. Walker. She turned. Dr. Naomi Blake caught up in a few long strides. She was in trauma scrub's hair pulled back into a stub of a ponytail, a stethoscope looped loosely around her neck. Rough night, Naomi asked. It was a night, Erin said. Naomi's eyes were warm, but sharp. She tucked her hands into her pockets. I heard about Trauma 3, she said. The V-fib that was not. Erin said nothing. Naomi studied her face for a moment, then let it go. Save some energy for whatever I-70 throws at us later, Naomi said lightly. Highway looks like a skating rink out there. Erin gave a small nod. Naomi stepped aside to let a cluster of residents pass, then headed for the stairwell instead of the elevator. As the door shut behind her, she looked back once. Erin was already walking away. By the time Erin reached the parking structure, the heavy morning cloud had settled over the city. The concrete levels smelled of exhaust and thawing snow. Her breath puffed pale in the air as she crossed to her car, the old dark Subaru she had bought, used in another state, and driven here without thinking too much about it. Her footsteps echoed lightly on the concrete. Somewhere below, a car alarm chirped and stopped. She dug for her keys, feeling the smooth edge of the plastic fob under her fingers. The first hint of the sound was a faint thrum underfoot, almost like another layer of the building-wide hum she had learned to tune out. Then it swelled low and rotating, chopping the air. The noise came from above, sending a faint vibration through the structure. She froze. A helicopter cleared the edge of the main hospital roof rotors, cutting the cold air into slices. The fuselage was bright white and orange, the logo of the medevac company painted on the side. It banked slightly nose-dipping as it lifted away toward the mountains. The hum of the blades pressed against her chest, her vision pinholed for an instant, the edges of the parking deck blurring. The world tilted. The concrete pillars became jerking shadows. For a heartbeat, she was somewhere else under a different sky. Canvas walls trembled as the rotor wash tore at them. Dust turned to a choking storm inside the tent. The metal table under her hands rattled. A young soldier's abdomen lay open in front of her, the cavity slick and red, her fingers deep inside, searching for a pulsing leak she could not see. We are out of time, Captain, a voice shouted over the roar. Bird has to lift in 30 seconds. Not yet, she yelled back, but the words vanished into the whirlwind. Her hands moved anyway, clamp, tie, pack feel. Her eyes stung from grit, her throat tasted of metal and sand. Mortars thudded outside close enough that the table jumped. Someone grabbed for a tray just before it slid off. The power flickered. The heartbeat under her fingers quivered and then steadied. The smell in the tent had been sweat and blood and hot electronics. The smell in the parking deck was wet concrete and exhaust. Erin pressed both palms flat against the side of her car and dragged herself back to it. The helicopter over Skyline shrank as it flew east. The roar faded to a buzz, then to nothing, swallowed by the early traffic on the nearby highway. Her lungs worked too fast. She made herself slow them. In through the nose. 1, 2, 3, 4, hold. 1, 2, out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Repeat. The tremor in her hands faded a little. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. The sound was small and domestic absurd against the echo in her chest. She pulled it out. A text from Linda glowed on the screen. You okay? Erin stared at the words. For a second, she pictured Linda standing at the nurse's station, reading the vitals of a dozen patients without missing the way a doctor flinched at a sound. Fine, Erin typed. Thanks. She hesitated over the send icon, then pressed it. The little bubble slid across the screen. The world did not change. Her heart still beat too hard, but more in her ribs now than her throat. Across the garage on a lower level, a figure paused in the shadow between two support columns. Naomi Blake had cut through the structure on her way from the stairwell to her own car when the helicopter passed overhead. She had watched Erin stiffen, watched her brace herself against the vehicle like it was the only solid thing in reach. Now she watched Erin climb in, sit for a moment without starting the engine, shoulders tight, then finally turn the key. Naomi stood very still until the Subaru's taillights disappeared down the ramp. Only then did she move again. Her own car was a compact sedan with a cracked dashboard and a scar on the rear bumper from a hit and run in residency. She slid behind the wheel, pulled out her phone, and stared at it for a moment. Growing up on bases had given her a certain intuition. The way Erin had moved during codes, the way she had ignored noise others reacted to, and reacted to noise others ignored the familiar shape of that flinch at the rotor sound. It all fit into something that felt a lot like a pattern. By the time Naomi reached her small office off the trauma bay, the ED had picked up, but she had a few minutes before her next case. She closed the door, opened her laptop, and clicked into a browser window. Her fingers hovered over the keys for a second. Then she typed carefully. Aaron Walker, Army Surgeon. Search results loaded. Articles, press releases, a handful of grainy photos. Many of the words were blacked out in the previews. Some links led to pages with blocks of redacted text, entire paragraphs turned into thick, black bars. A commendation from a Special Operations Command sat on one tab, mostly stripped of detail. A casualty report from a forward surgical site in Ghazni province sat on another, names and ranks and abbreviations that told their own story. Naomi leaned closer, lips pressed together. She took a screenshot of what she could see, then another. After a moment, she closed each tab one by one and cleared the browser history with a few quick clicks. The hum of the hospital pressed faintly through the office door, the same low vibration that filled every hallway. Naomi sat back in her chair, phone resting in her palm. Whatever Skyline Memorial thought it knew about Dr. Aaron Walker, it was not the whole picture. By early afternoon, the sky had brightened, but never quite turned blue. The clouds sat low over Denver, heavy with more snow they had not decided to drop yet. Light seeped through the tall windows at the end of the emergency department corridor, thin and cold. The rush from the morning had thinned. A few hallway beds held patients waiting for imaging or consults. A toddler with croup barked in a corner room. Somewhere, a television in the family lounge played muted daytime court shows for no one. Aaron stood beside a crash cart near the pediatric wing, rearranging the top drawer. Someone had raided it for a previous code and put half the supplies back in the wrong places. She pulled out stray syringes, lined vials in neat rows, smoothed the edge of a packet that had been crumpled. The metal under her fingertips felt cool. The labels settled into a pattern that made sense. She could feel her shoulders loosen a fraction when everything sat where it belonged. A nurse at the nearby station clicked through charts. The overhead paging system crackled once, then stayed silent. For a moment, the only sounds were the distant roll of a cart and the soft beep of a monitor somewhere out of sight. The comm shattered with the harsh bark of the radio. Skyline, this is Medic 12. We have a school bus rollover on eastbound I-70 near exit 209. Multiple pediatric patients. Repeat, multiple pediatric patients. The nurse at the station snatched up the receiver. Go ahead, Medic 12. Approximately 16 kids ages, maybe 6 to 12. 2 unconscious, several with obvious fractures, multiple lacerations. We are starting triage on scene. Estimated time to you is 5 to 7 minutes, requesting pediatric trauma activation. The nurse's face tightened. Understood. Activating now. Her fingers flew over the call board. The electronic tone for a trauma activation pulsed low and insistent through the department. Ped trauma incoming. Let us move, someone said. The hum of the hospital snapped into a higher pitch. Curtains swished open as nurses cleared bays. Housekeeping rolled gurneys out of the way. A clerk began printing wristbands and labels, the printer coughing out strips of paper. Walker. Dr. Daniel Liu stepped out of his office as if the sound had pulled him on a string. He wore dark green scrubs, the legs tucked into shoe covers. He had not had time to change after his last case. You are here. I am here, Aaron said. We have pediatrics. His eyes flicked toward the doors that led to the ambulance bay. We need resus ready. 4 bays minimum. He turned, voice rising. I want trauma 1 and 2 cleared now. 3 and 4 for serious but stable. Overflow to 5 and 6. Call anesthesia. Get respiratory in here. Someone find Patel. I am here, Jason Patel called as he jogged up, hair slightly askew, mask hanging around his neck, trying to look more awake than he was. Good, Daniel said. You take trauma 3 with me. Walker start with minor lax in 12 once they come in. Keep them moving and out of the way. The criticals get the rooms closest to the desk. Understood, Aaron said. He had already turned to shout orders at another nurse. She pushed the crash cart into place where the hall met the trauma bays and set the brakes. The double doors leading to the ambulance entrance stood closed glass, reflecting the fluorescent light. For a heartbeat, the department held its breath. Then distant sirens grew louder. Blue and red lights washed over the glass. The first ambulance backed into the bay. The doors slid open and cold air rushed in, bringing with it the smell of diesel and wet asphalt. The first 2 children off the rigs were crying, which everyone knew was a good sign. A boy with a deep gash on his forehead screamed whenever someone tried to touch it. A girl clutched her arm close, sobbing the wrist bent at an angle that should not be possible. Trauma 5, get him cleaned and glued, Daniel called. 6 for the wrist, splint and x-ray. A third stretcher came through. The girl on it did not cry. She lay still, eyes half open, lips tinged gray. An oxygen mask fogged with each shallow breath. Her small chest moved fast and tight. One side rose higher than the other. 10-year-old female unrestrained, the paramedic called. Hit the side window. Decreased breath sounds on the right. Vitals dropping en route. Trauma 3, Daniel said. Patel, that is you. Move. Jason stepped to the head of the bed, snapping on gloves he had grabbed too quickly. One thumb caught on the cuff, and he had to yank it free. The girl's hair was matted with glass dust and melted snow. Aaron watched as more children were wheeled in. 9, 10, and 11. Voices stacked on voices. Parents began to arrive, pulled by phone calls and frantic text messages, faces white, hands shaking. A nurse guided a small boy to bed 12. His t-shirt was soaked red across the front, but it was mostly scalp. Head wounds bled as if trying to prove something. Forehead laceration, maybe 3 centimeters, no loss of consciousness, the nurse said. This one is yours, Dr. Walker. Aaron nodded and slipped on a new pair of gloves. The boy tried to see around her toward the other rooms. Am I going to die? He asked. Not from that cut, she said, checking his pupils with a penlight. What is your name? Leo. Leo, I am Aaron. I am going to fix this up so you can show off a cool story. He tried to smile. It came out crooked and scared. While she spoke, part of her mind tracked the sounds behind her. She heard Daniel's voice bark a request for a chest x-ray in Trauma 2. She heard the paramedics give handoff reports. Over it all, she heard the high, continuous tone of a monitor alarm, steady and shrill. It came from Trauma 3. She glanced over her shoulder. The girl lay more still now. The oxygen saturation numbers on the monitor glowed in angry red, ticking down 91, 88, 84. Her chest wall on the right side barely moved. The skin at the base of her neck puffed with each breath. Jason stood at her side, a chest tube tray open on the stand next to him. His hand shook as he picked up the scalpel. Sweat beaded at his temple. Dr. Patel, what is taking so long? Daniel called from Trauma 1. I am prepping, Jason said, voice a shade too high. The nurse at the bedside snapped open a bottle of antiseptic and handed him a gauze pad. He swabbed the skin in broad strokes that missed the mark too high, too far back. The monitor beeped again, 79. Aaron looked back at Leo. The boy watched her eyes wide-lipped, trembling. His bleeding had slowed to an ooze. The cut was messy, but not deep. Are my parents coming? He asked. They are on their way, she said. She set the gauze in his hand. Hold this here for me, Leo. Press gently. You are helping. He obeyed, his small fingers clamping down harder than necessary. His attention shifted to the task. The nurse at his bedside murmured to him, taking over the job of keeping him anchored. Aaron stepped away. Walk, she told herself. She did not run. She crossed the distance to Trauma 3 in 4 long strides. At the doorway, she paused just long enough to take in the scene. The girl's eyes had rolled back, only slivers of iris showing. Her lips had darkened to a deeper blue. The hollow above her collarbones sucked in with each breath. The monitor showed an oxygen saturation of 75 and falling. The blood pressure cuff tried and failed to get a reading. Jason's hand hovered over the girl's chest with the scalpel uncertain. His fingers trembled so much the blade's tip traced a faint, unintentional line on the antiseptic wet skin. Jason, Aaron said. He startled and looked up, eyes wide behind his goggles. I have it, he said. No, she replied. Her voice stayed low, but the tone shifted, a note of iron sliding under. Step aside. For a second, he did not move. Pride flashed across his face, then fear as the monitor alarm changed pitch. Dr. Patel, the nurse said quietly. We are losing her. He stepped back. Aaron took his place without needing to ask. She sucked in a breath, the smell of antiseptic sharp in her nose, and pressed her fingertips along the girl's rib cage. Count the ribs. 2, 3, 4. At the 5th interspace in the mid-axillary line, the space between bone and bone gave her just enough. Betadine again, she said. Fresh scalpel, 28 French chest tube. Now, the nurse, younger and nervous, hesitated and glanced toward Daniel. He was tied up at another bed, hands deep in an abdominal exam, eyes flicking between patients. Do it, Aaron snapped. The instruments hit her palm one by one. She worked fast, but not hurried. 2 strokes of antiseptic, an incision clean through skin, and the tissue beneath the resistance giving way under the blade with a small familiar slide. She set the scalpel down and used her index finger to bluntly dissect through muscle, feeling her way. Warmth closed around her knuckle, then parted as she pushed through the pleura. Air hissed against her finger like a tiny sigh. She reached for the chest tube. It was larger than looked comfortable, but a child's chest allowed less room for error. She guided it in along the track she had made, feeling the sudden freedom when the tip entered the pleural space. The hiss grew louder, air rushing out the trapped lung, beginning to re-expand. Connect to suction, she said. The nurse's hands shook as she attached the tube to the drainage system, but the seal held. Aaron watched for the subtle rise and fall of fluid with each breath. Oscillation. Good. On the monitor, the numbers hesitated, then began to climb. 78, 83, 88. The alarm quieted into regular beeps. Color seeped back into the girl's lips, faint but real. Erin secured the tube with quick, neat sutures and taped it down. Her fingers moved with a speed and precision that felt older than the hospital, older than the city outside. Only when the girl's chest rose more evenly did she step back. The room seemed to exhale with her. The nurse wiped at her forehead with the back of her wrist. Jason stared at the chest tube, then at Erin. "Where did you learn to do it like that?" he asked, voice hushed. Erin pulled at the fingers of her gloves, peeling them off one by one. Her heart beat hard, but her hands did not shake. "School," she said. Daniel had moved closer during the last moments of the procedure without her noticing. He stood just inside the doorway, a syringe still in his hand, watching her with an expression that was not quite surprise, not quite admiration. Something more complicated sat behind his eyes. He looked from Erin to the girl, to the steady numbers on the monitor, then back again. By the time the last ambulance crew signed their paperwork and left, the light outside had shifted toward late afternoon. The snow had started again, in fine flakes clinging to the windows in thin streaks. Inside the emergency department looked like a room after a storm. Supplies sat open on counters. Blood dotted the floor in fading smears. A stuffed backpack with cartoon cats on it leaned forgotten against a chair. The noise had dropped a level. The cries had thinned to sniffles. Parents sat beside beds, hunched in plastic chairs, hands wrapped around small fingers. Nurses moved from room to room with the quiet efficiency that came after adrenaline when exhaustion began to seep in under the doors. All 16 children were alive. 2 were already on their way to the operating room with orthopedics. 5 had been admitted for observation and pain management. The others, the ones with cuts and bruises and fractures that looked dramatic but were structurally kind, waited for final discharge orders and instructions that would send them home with bandages and stories. In trauma, 3, the girl with the chest tube, slept under a warmed blanket. Her chest rose and fell evenly. The tube bumped gently with each breath, connected to a clear drainage box that showed a faint, steady dance of fluid. Her oxygen saturation glowed green in the mid-90s. Erin stood just inside the curtain, chart in hand. She watched the monitor for one more breath, then another, then wrote a brief note. Intervention tolerated, tube functioning, vitals stable. Her handwriting was small and precise, the letters marching in straight lines even where the paper had been bent. When she was done, she closed the chart and hung it back on the rail. At bed 12, Leo had a neat line of sutures above his eyebrow. The edges of the wound came together like a zippered seam. He held a sticker in one hand that said, "Brave patient," in bright letters. His mother sat beside him, still pale, still holding his foot as if he might drift away if she let go. "Thank you," she said as Erin passed. Erin nodded. "Keep that dry for 24 hours. If he gets a headache that does not go away or throws up more than once, come back." The mother nodded rapidly, soaking up each word. Daniel appeared at the nurse's station with a clipboard under his arm, the collar of his scrub top pulled askew. His hair stood up where he had run a hand through it. He scanned the board, checked a few boxes, then exhaled. "No deaths," he said softly. Linda leaned on the counter, a styrofoam cup between her palms. "Not today." Jason stood off to the side at a computer pretending to type. His gaze kept dragging toward Trauma 3. When Erin approached the desk, he straightened. "No pneumo complications so far," he said. "Her vitals look good." "They will keep better that way," Erin replied. Her tone was neutral. He opened his mouth as if to say something else, then closed it when someone called his name from radiology. He hurried away. "Walker." Daniel's voice carried less volume than it had during the chaos, but still had that edge of command. "Good work." She looked at him. His expression was open-tired and something else she could not quite read. "The whole team," she said. "Yes," he agreed. "The team." He turned his head as a pager went off at his hip. "I have to talk to ortho about those femur fractures. Try to eat something that is not coffee." He walked away. Erin watched him go. She felt the familiar drop that came when the urgent parts were over. It often arrived with a wave of fatigue that made her muscles feel heavier than they should. "Dr. Walker," a unit clerk called. "Dr. Lang would like to see you in his office." Every sound in the room had a texture she knew. The beep of monitors, the murmur of families. This sentence had a different weight. It fell in her chest rather than in her ears. "Now?" she asked. The clerk nodded. "He asked for you as soon as you were free." Erin took off her gloves, dropped them in the red bin, and wiped her hands with sanitizer until the alcohol cooled her skin. She smoothed the front of her scrub top once and walked out of the department. The hallway to the administrative wing seemed quieter than the rest of the hospital. The lighting felt a little dimmer, even though the fixtures were the same. Plaques lined the walls, listing donors and board members framed in tasteful brushed metal. Dr. Richard Lang's office sat at the end of the corridor. His name appeared in clean black letters on a placard beside the door. The receptionist looked up as Erin approached. "He is expecting you," the receptionist said. "Go right in." Erin knocked once anyway, then opened the door. Lang stood behind his desk jacket, still on tie, perfectly centered. Papers lay in stacks that looked usual yet controlled. The blinds behind him were angled to let in light without a view. "Dr. Walker," he said. "Thank you for coming." She closed the door softly and stood in front of the chair opposite his desk. He did not invite her to sit, so she did not. "You had a busy afternoon," he said. "The whole department did," she answered. He watched her for a moment, tapping one finger lightly on a manila folder. It was thin, which told her more than a thick one would have. "I have reviewed the initial reports from the I-70 incident," he said. "First, let me say that the fact no children died today is something we are all grateful for." He paused just long enough that she knew the second half of the sentence was coming. "That said, there are issues we need to address." Her throat felt dry. "All right. You performed a chest tube insertion on a pediatric patient without having procedural privileges for that intervention," he said. His voice stayed calm, almost conversational. "You did so without the attending on that case present at the bedside. You displaced the resident assigned to that patient." "The resident was not able to perform the procedure," Aaron said. "Her oxygen saturation was in the 70s. Her blood pressure was unreadable. She had signs of tension physiology. She was about to arrest." "There were other attendings available," Lang replied. "You could have called Dr. Liu." "He was scrubbed with another patient at that exact moment," Aaron said. "If I had left the bedside to find him, she would have arrested and likely died before he arrived." His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "You understand that is your interpretation of the situation," he said. "Others might question whether it was that critical." "Look at the vitals," she said. "Look at the notes. Then tell me it was not." For a heartbeat, something flickered in his eyes. He opened the folder and glanced at a page, not because he needed the information, but to create a gap. "I'm not saying the patient did not benefit," he said eventually. "I am saying that benefit came at the cost of violating hospital policy." She felt a small, dull anger stir under her ribs. She kept it where it was. "So because she lived, we now have a problem," she said. "If she had died while we waited for someone with the right box checked, there would be no policy issue." "There would be a different one," he answered. "And perhaps that complaint would be about a resident who hesitated. As it stands, this hospital is now exposed to a risk you did not have the authority to create." He closed the folder. "This is not a battlefield, Dr. Walker," he said, echoing his line from the morning. "We cannot allow individuals to decide on their own that their judgment exceeds the system." He placed his hands flat on the desk. "For that reason, effective immediately, you are suspended from all direct patient care. You will not participate in procedures, orders, or hands-on treatment until the Medical Review Board has completed its investigation." The words landed like a series of small impacts, each one knocking something slightly out of alignment. "How long will that take?" she asked. "As long as is necessary," he said. "You will be contacted with a schedule for interviews." She thought of the children in the bays downstairs, the bus on its side on the highway, the girl in trauma, 3 breathing through the tube in her chest. "Understood," she said. He waited as if expecting an argument, an apology, anything that would give him a reason to lean into the authority he wore, like one of his tailored suits. When none came, he gave a small nod. "You can turn in your badge to Human Resources," he said. "They will handle the administrative side. You remain an employee, but your access will be limited to non-clinical areas." "All right," she replied. "That will be all," he said. She turned and walked out. The door latch clicked softly behind her. In the hallway, the air felt different, thinner, and slightly cooler. Aaron stood for a moment, letting her hand rest on the smooth paint of the wall. The fluorescent hum seemed louder on this side of the hospital. Linda waited near the corner, arms crossed, a visitor badge hanging from her pocket, along with her regular one. Her posture straightened when she saw Aaron's face. "Let me guess," Linda said. "He gave you a medal." "Not exactly," Aaron said. "What did he do?" Linda asked. "Suspended," Aaron said. The word tasted flat. "No patient care until the board finishes." Linda swore under her breath in Spanish, then looked quickly up and down the corridor as if the walls might be listening. "You saved that girl's life," she said. Aaron lifted one shoulder and let it fall. "She is alive, as Sheila said. That is what matters." "It should," Linda replied. They stood in silence for a few seconds. Footsteps and distant voices drifted from farther down the hall. A cart squeaked past, pushed by someone who did not look at them. "If you need anything," Linda said, "you have my number." Aaron nodded. "Thank you." She walked away before the tightness in her chest could reach her throat. At home that night, the apartment felt smaller than usual. The single room held a narrow bed, a small kitchen area, a table with one chair. Everything had its place. The trash had been taken out. The sink was empty. A single mug sat on the counter beside a coffee maker. On the shelf above the table rested a picture frame with a crack spidering through one corner of the glass. Aaron picked it up. The photograph inside had been taken in harsh sunlight. 5 people in desert uniforms stood in front of a tent made of tan canvas. Their faces were dirty and tired and smiling. She stood in the middle, younger, with new lines at the edges of her eyes. On one side of her, Logan Price threw an arm around her shoulders, his grin wide. On the other, Tasha Nguyen leaned slightly into the frame, hand on her hip. Ben Ortiz crouched in front, 2 fingers raised in a crooked peace sign. Kyle Rivers stood at the back, one hand on a stack of supply crates. The crack in the glass cut across Logan's face. It had happened during a move from one apartment to another. She had never fixed it. Her thumb traced the line of damage. A tiny shard of glass caught the pad of her finger. She felt a sharp sting, then saw a bead of blood swell up bright and clean. She watched it for a second, then wiped it on the leg of her scrubs. Carefully, she set the frame face down on the shelf. The room felt very quiet. The hum of the refrigerator, the faint rush of traffic outside. Somewhere in the building, a neighbor coughed. Aaron sat at the table, hands folded, and listened until the sounds blurred together into something that felt almost like the distant noise of engines. 3 days later, the snow in Denver had turned to a gray slush pushed into ridges along the curbs. The air held that damp chill that crawled under coats. Skyline Memorial rose out of it in glass and brick, the logo on the front facade bright and clean against the winter sky. Erin walked through the revolving door with her hands in the pockets of a plain black jacket instead of a white coat. She wore jeans and an old sweater under it, a concession to the fact that she was not supposed to touch patients today. Her hospital badge, still clipped to her collar, felt heavier than usual. The lobby smelled of floor cleaner and brewed coffee. A volunteer at the information desk handed visitor badges to a couple, clutching a folder of test results. Somewhere above, a transport team wheeled a squeaking gurney across polished tile. Human Resources sat on the second floor, far from the emergency department. The sign outside the suite was done in friendly letters with a little green leaf at the corner, as if that would soften the fact that most people came in either nervous or angry. The woman at the HR desk had a phone headset on and a mug with a cartoon dog on it. She gestured Erin to a chair with a professional smile. "Dr. Walker, we have you on the schedule. Just a few forms, nothing too painful." She slid a stack of papers across the desk. Erin picked up the pen, feeling its cheap plastic weight. Severance options, continuation of benefits, a line about unused vacation days. The words blurred now and then, not from emotion so much as from how little they seemed to connect to anything that mattered. "Once the board completes its review, we will update your file," the woman said. "Until then, these are just contingencies." The word contingencies tasted strange. Erin had heard it used in other rooms with other stakes. She initialed and signed where she was told her handwriting just as neat on these forms as in a chart. When she finished, the woman gathered the pages, stapled them into packets, and put them in a manila folder. "If you have questions about anything, you can email me," she said. "My address is on the top right." "Thank you," Erin said. She stepped back into the hallway. For a moment, she considered walking straight out of the building through the lobby, past the chairs where families waited, and not looking back. Her stomach reminded her she had not eaten since the previous night. The coffee she had made at home had tasted burnt. She had poured it out. The idea of food did not appeal, but the headache pulsing behind her eyes argued for something. The cafeteria sat one level down. The escalator carried her past framed posters about hand hygiene and wellness programs. The smell hit her halfway down tomato soup, old fryer oil, and too much sugar on baked goods. It was past the lunch rush. A handful of people sat scattered at the tables. A phlebotomist in a red scrub top scrolled through her phone. 2 residents bent over a tablet murmuring. A family in matching parkas picked at a shared tray. Erin collected a pre-made sandwich and a bottle of water on autopilot, slid her badge to pay, and chose a table near the window. From there, she could see the parking structure and a slice of the street beyond cars splashing through slush. She unwrapped the sandwich. The bread was dry at the edges. The lettuce had given up hours ago. She took a bite anyway, chewing without really tasting. "Mind if I sit?" She looked up. Dr. Naomi Blake stood at the end of the table, tray in hand. Her scrub top bore a faint smear of something the color of iodine near the hem. There were shadows under her eyes. Erin lifted one shoulder. "Go ahead." Naomi set her tray down across from Erin and sat. She did not start eating right away. She opened a bottle of iced tea, took a sip, and watched the condensation form a ring on the tabletop. For a few moments, they sat in a pocket of quiet. The clatter from the serving line seemed farther away than it was. "I am not on your service today," Naomi said finally. "You do not have to make small talk." "I am not great at it anyway," Erin answered. Naomi allowed herself a brief smile. It faded quickly. "I did something," she said. "I should tell you." Erin set her sandwich down. "All right." Naomi rested her elbows on the table hands loosely clasped. "I looked you up," she said, "outside the hospital system." Erin's fingers tightened around the crinkled edge of plastic wrap. "You should not have done that." "Probably not," Naomi agreed. "But I did, and once you see certain things, you cannot pretend you did not." She held Erin's gaze. Captain Aaron Walker, she said quietly. Army Medical Corps, forward surgical site in Ghazni, attached to 75th Rangers for 3 tours, commendation from Special Operations Command, congressional testimony in 2018, most of it redacted. The air between them seemed to sharpen. Stop, Aaron said. Naomi did not raise her voice. She did not lean in. She just continued. I saw the casualty report, she said. Arrowhead, 4 KIA in a mortar strike on the surgical unit. Images flickered behind Aaron's eyes without permission. Canvas collapsing, a spray of dust and metal, the sound of someone yelling a name that never got answered. You read a lot from a few blacked out lines, Aaron said. Her tone came out flat. I grew up on bases, Naomi said. You learn to read between the redactions. She took a breath. You could be at Walter Reed or San Antonio or any big-name hospital you wanted, she went on. And instead you are here organizing supply closets and getting lectured by administrators who have never seen a chest tube placed outside a fluoroscopy suite. Why? Aaron looked down at her hands. They lay on either side of the sandwich fingers, slightly curled. I am done with war, she said. The answer sat on the table between them, simple and heavy. Naomi nodded slowly, as if she had expected that. Fair, she said. But you are not done saving people. A shouted voice cut across the cafeteria. Excuse me, I am looking for a Dr. Walker. Aaron flinched before she could stop herself. The man who had spoken stood just inside the entrance. He looked out of place among the scrubs and visitor passes. His worn leather jacket had seen better years. The hem of his flannel shirt hung unevenly over faded jeans. Snow clung to the laces of his boots. He scanned the room in sections the way people do when they have spent years being taught to read spaces. His gaze slid over tables, doors, exits. It stopped when it hit Aaron. For a second, all the color drained from his face. There you are, he said, voice breaking a little. He took a step forward, then another. Ma'am. He moved between tables with a slight hitch in his left leg. As he drew closer, Aaron saw the short cropped hair gone mostly gray, the deep lines at the corners of his mouth, the tattoo on his hand half hidden by his sleeve. She recognized the way he carried his injuries as much as anything else. He stopped at the edge of the table and set both hands on the back of the chair across from her to steady himself. Captain Walker, he said. The word landed hard. Conversations at nearby tables faded. A fork clinked against a plate and stayed there. You have the wrong person, Aaron said automatically. Her voice felt distant to her own ears. He shook his head, eyes wet now. No, ma'am, he said. Not a chance. He dragged the chair back and sat heavily. Naomi had gone very still. Ghazni Province, he said. Forward Surgical Site, Arrowhead, 2017. I was Staff Sergeant Marcus Hill, 2nd Battalion, 75th Rangers. The smell in the cafeteria was coffee and reheated soup. For a second, Aaron smelled dust and burned metal instead. I was hit by shrapnel north of the river, he said. Ruptured spleen, arterial bleed no one could find. They brought me into your tent while rockets were still falling. Medics said it did not look good. His hands shook as he spoke. He laid one palm on his abdomen. You operated on me on a table that did not stop shaking, he said. Some lieutenant kept yelling that the bird had to lift. Pilot said you had 30 seconds before they left without me. His voice thickened. He looked down, then back up at her. You looked at him, Hill said. You looked at him and said, he is not dying on my table. You can wait. Naomi's eyes flicked to Aaron, surprised. You found the bleed, Hill went on. Clamped it, packed me, closed just enough to get me on the helicopter. All while the tent felt like it was going to come down around us. He swallowed and reached for the hem of his shirt. With hands that still trembled, he pulled it up, baring his lower torso. A thick, jagged scar cut across his abdomen from left to right, the kind that speaks of speed and necessity rather than cosmetic concern. The skin around it was puckered and pale. You did this, he said. The cafeteria had gone almost completely silent. Somewhere a tray rattled and then stopped. You told me, Hill said, voice shaking. You told me I was going to see my little girl graduate high school, and that if she did not invite you, you would be offended. A small, incredulous laugh slipped out of Naomi before she could catch it. Hill smiled through the tears that had finally escaped and were making tracks down his weathered cheeks. She walked the stage last spring, he said. Valedictorian, her name is Maya. She is starting college in the fall. He wiped at his face with the back of his wrist. I have been trying to find you for years, he said. But your records were all locked up. Then one of the guys I served with said he heard about a Dr. Walker in Denver who did a chest tube on a kid like she was tying her shoes. His gaze dropped for a second, then came back up full of something like awe and gratitude tangled together. I had to come, he said. I had to say thank you, properly. Erin's hands had closed into fists in her lap. She forced them to open. Her throat felt tight, as if the air in the room had thickened. You did your job, she said softly. So did you, Hill replied, and I'm still breathing because you would not stop. He reached across the table and set his hand lightly on her shoulder. The weight was warm and real. His fingers curled just enough to convey pressure without trapping her. "Thank you, Captain," he said. The title rang off the hard surfaces of the cafeteria. People looked up from their meals from their phones. A respiratory therapist, standing near the salad bar, froze with tongs in hand. A group of nurses at a corner table fell silent. Erin swallowed. Her eyes burned in a way that had nothing to do with fatigue. She met his gaze. "How is Maya?" she asked. The words came out rough. "Smart," he said. "Stubborn. She wants to study engineering. She sends her regards, ma'am, even if she does not remember you." She was 9 at the time. "Tell her congratulations," Erin said. "Tell her I said she earned every bit of it." "I will," he said. He squeezed her shoulder once, then let go. He pulled his shirt back down and stood the hitch in his leg more noticeable now that the adrenaline of the moment had passed. "I will get out of your hair," he said, a little hoarse. "I know you are busy." He glanced at the half-eaten sandwich on her tray and smiled faintly. "Or maybe not so busy right now," he added. He nodded to Naomi in acknowledgement, then turned and walked away through the rows of tables. No one blocked his path. A few people stepped aside without seeming to realize they had moved. The doors to the cafeteria opened with a soft hiss and closed behind him. The silence he left behind was dense. Then whispering started at one table, then another. Names floated in the air in fragments. Rangers, Ghazni, Captain. Naomi sat back slowly. Her tea had gone untouched. "That was," she began, then stopped. She tried again. "You told a special operations team they could wait," she said. Erin let out a breath she had not noticed she was holding. It shuddered a little on the way out. "They waited," she said. Naomi studied her for a long moment. There was respect in her eyes now that had not been there in quite the same way before, layered over the curiosity. "You know this hospital is going to be buzzing before you even leave the building," Naomi said quietly. "Word travels fast in closed systems." Erin picked up her sandwich again. It looked the same as before. It did not feel like the same object. She took a small bite, chewing carefully. "It usually does," she said. Rumors moved through Skyline Memorial like a change in barometric pressure. You could not always say when they started. You felt them. By the time Erin finished her sandwich in the cafeteria, an orderly who had been on his break was already telling a nurse in the main lobby that a war hero had just been thanked in person by a ranger. The nurse repeated it in the elevator to a resident, adding a few details she thought she remembered from a documentary about combat hospitals. The resident, halfway through a consult note, mentioned it to an intern at the workroom computer, who stared at him with wide eyes and said, "That Walker." In the surgical lounge, Dr. Richard Lang heard a blurred version from his secretary, who had heard it from someone in radiology who swore they had been in the cafeteria at the time. "Apparently a soldier came in and called her Captain Walker," the secretary said, setting a folder on his desk. "Thanked her for saving his life under fire, in a tent, with rockets." Lang's hand stilled on his pen. He did not say anything for a long moment. "Interesting," he said at last. "Thank you." In the emergency department, Linda listened with half an ear as a respiratory therapist recounted what she had seen between bites of pudding. Linda's expression did not change much. She did not look surprised. "Huh," she said mildly. "Is that so?" By evening, Erin's name had attached itself to words like Rangers and Special Operations in quiet conversations all over the building. The stories varied in detail, but they all had the same shape. On the 4th day after her suspension, Erin stood in the parking structure beside her Subaru with the trunk open. Cardboard boxes sat inside, stacked 2 deep. One held a few textbooks and a dog-eared trauma manual. Another held a pair of old sneakers, a sweater, a coffee mug with the Skyline logo that had been a staff gift one holiday. A third contained the contents of her locker, folded and arranged side by side. On the passenger seat lay an envelope from Human Resources thick with paperwork. A yellow sticky note on the front bore a neat smiley face somebody had drawn, as if that would help. Her breath steamed in the cold air. Snow had been cleared from the deck, but damp patches still glistened dark on the concrete. Her fingers stung a little from the chill, even inside her gloves. She closed the trunk and leaned against it for a moment, facing the hospital. From this angle, she could see the line of windows that belonged to the emergency department. One of them showed a flash of movement as someone walked past. She tried to picture the monitors inside the rows of beds, the hum. Her phone rang in her pocket. She almost did not answer. The urge to let it go to voicemail tugged at her hand. Habit 1. She pulled it out and glanced at the screen. "Linda." She swiped to accept. "Walker. Where are you?" Linda's voice came fast-clipped, louder than she usually spoke. "Garage," Erin said. "Clearing my stuff." "You need to come back inside," Linda said. "Right now." "Linda," Erin began. "You know I'm not cleared. Lang made that very clear. If this is about a chart or a supply issue, you should call someone else." "This is not about supplies," Linda said. The words came through with a faint echo, like she was walking as she talked. "Multi-vehicle collision on eastbound I-70 near the foothills. 12 trauma patients on the way, maybe more. We are already full. Or is backed up. Dr. Liu is asking for you by name. Erin stood a little straighter. The cold in the air receded, replaced by something tighter in her chest. There are other surgeons, she said. They are either in OR or not here, Linda said. We are short-staffed, and the storm is making transfers impossible. People are trapped in cars. The first rigs are 5 minutes out, and the rest are right behind them. Erin could hear something behind Linda's voice. A loudspeaker somewhere, the faint blare of a siren, a shouted order that she could not quite make out. I am suspended, Erin said. If Lang finds out I took a case, he will fire me, or worse. I do not care what Lang does, Linda said. People are dying on the highway. I am telling you the truth. We need you. Dr. Liu needs you. Those patients need you. The choice sat there plain as an open doorway. Erin looked at the envelope on the passenger seat. The hospital's name in the letterhead, her own written in black ink. She imagined leaving, driving down the ramp, feeling the bump as she passed the gate arm. She imagined not knowing what had happened in trauma that night. Her hand tightened on the phone. All right, she said. I'm coming back. She hung up before Linda could answer. The automatic doors to the ER opened as she approached. The sound hit her before the smell did. Voices layered over each other, urgent and rough, the squeal of gurney wheels, the rush of air from the ambulance bay, the metallic tang of blood threading through the antiseptic. Inside, everything had the slightly blurred look of organized chaos. Nurses pulled on gowns as they moved. A paramedic shouted a report over his shoulder as he backed into a bay. Somewhere a child cried out in pain, high and thin. Daniel stood near the center station, tablet in hand, trying to direct traffic while fielding questions from 3 directions at once. His hair was flattened on one side, as if he had run his hand through it and left it there. He turned as Erin came in. Relief flashed across his face like a light switching on. Walker, he said. Thank God. She was already tying a disposable gown around her waist. Tell me what we have. Car versus truck, multiple spinouts behind it, he said. We have 3 in critical condition. 2 with apparent head injuries, 1 with abdominal trauma and hypotension. The rest are a mix of fractures and chest injuries, or has 2 rooms tied up. Anesthesia is stretched thin. As he spoke, paramedics rolled in another gurney. A man in his 30s lay strapped to the board, skin-gray hair plastered to his forehead with sweat. His shirt had been cut away, leaving his abdomen bare and distended. Dried blood streaked his flank. Male mid-30s, the paramedic called. Front seat passenger, no airbag deployment. Hypotensive, en route, non-responsive to fluids. Belly firm and getting bigger. Trauma 2, Daniel said. Now. They wheeled the bed into the room. Erin followed, pulling on gloves as she walked. The air in the bay felt warmer, thicker. The monitor cables snaked across the floor. Blood pressure is 68/40, a nurse said, pressing the button to cycle the cuff again. Heart rate 140. Get 2 units of O-negative hanging, Daniel said. Cross-match more. Type and screen for at least 6. Erin pressed her palm lightly against the man's abdomen. It was taut, unyielding like a drum. Positive fast in all quadrants, Daniel said. A cold streak of ultrasound gel gleamed on the patient's flank where someone had already scanned him. I cannot get him stable enough to send him to CT, or is still occupied. They say 20 minutes. He does not have 20 minutes, Erin said. The man's eyelids fluttered. A faint groan escaped him when Erin pushed deeper along the upper right quadrant. His blood pressure alarm began to beep continuously. Daniel pinched the bridge of his nose for a second, thinking. I can call Lang to open a room, he said. By the time he fights with anesthesia and vascular over who gets priority, this man will be in PEA, Erin said. You know that. The nurse hung the first unit of blood. Red ran into the tubing, then into the man's arm. The drip seemed too slow. Erin met Daniel's eyes. Her voice was steady. We do it here, she said. Crash laparotomy, now. Daniel looked down at the man, then at the room around them. No overhead surgical lights, just fluorescence. No wall of instruments neatly laid out, just a trauma cart with the basics. No sterile field beyond what they could create on the fly. That is against every protocol we have, he said. So is letting him bleed out in front of us because we are afraid of paperwork, Erin said. Silence held for half a second. The only sound was the monitor alarm and the distant echo of other emergencies. Then Daniel nodded once. The decision settled over his face like something concrete. All right, he said. We do it. He stepped into the hall. Linda, I need a laparotomy tray in trauma 2 now. Full sterile drapes. As many lap pads as we have on hand. Call anesthesia and tell them to send someone to give sedation and intubate. Tell them I will owe them. On it, Linda called back. A young nurse, Rebecca, hovered near the doorway, eyes wide. Erin recognized her from a previous shift, her badge new enough that the edges still shone. You? Erin said. Rebecca Wright. The nurse nodded, startled. Yes, doctor. Have you ever assisted in an abdominal surgery? Aaron asked. Twice, Rebecca said. In nursing school. Today makes 3, Aaron said. Stay with me. If you are not sure what I'm asking for, say so. No guessing. Rebecca swallowed, then nodded again. An anesthesiologist arrived already pulling on gloves, placing an airway, giving medications. The man's breathing settled into a mechanical rhythm, the ventilator sighing in time with the beeps. Aaron scrubbed at the small sink in the corner, the water hitting her hands hot enough to make her flinch. She let it scrubbing until her skin felt raw. She dried with a sterile towel and held out her hands, while Rebecca helped her into a gown and gloves. Prep from nipples to knees, Aaron said. Broad strokes. The antiseptic solution spread across the man's torso, turning his skin a ghostly orange. The smell reached the back of her throat. She took a breath anyway. Drapes went up, forming a rectangle of exposed abdomen framed in green fabric. Outside that window, the emergency department went on. Inside it, the world narrowed to the rise and fall of one struggling belly. Scalpel, Aaron said. The handle pressed into her palm with a weight that felt familiar. She placed the tip at the midline below the sternum and drew it down in a straight line. The first resistance of skin gave way with a smooth, practiced slide. Blood welled along the edges, dark against the orange. She cut through the subcutaneous tissue, then the fascia, each layer opening to reveal the next. The suction hissed softly as Rebecca kept the field clear. When we open the peritoneum, it will come fast, Aaron said quietly. Be ready with lap pads. We pack all 4 quadrants. Yes, doctor, Rebecca said. Her voice shook only a little. Aaron lifted the last thin layer of tissue and nicked it. Warmth flooded out a rush of dark blood that filled the incision almost instantly. Lap pads, Aaron said louder now. Rebecca handed them over in pairs. Aaron plunged them into the cavity, one to the right upper quadrant, one to the left, then lower. Her fingers disappeared up to the knuckles in heat and slickness. She pressed down firm, creating a crude dam with cloth. Hang another unit, Daniel said from the head of the bed, watching the pressure numbers. And get platelets ready. Aaron felt along the padded area in the right upper quadrant, searching for the source. Beneath the soaked pads, she found the jagged edge of a torn liver, the tissue pulsing under her touch. Liver laceration, she said. Grade 4 at least. So we pack tighter, Daniel said. She did stacking pad on pad until the bleeding slowed under the compression. The monitor numbers quivered, then steadied a little. The heart rate dropped from the 40s into the 30s, then climbed back into the 120s. The blood pressure inched up enough to register again on the screen. Do not relax yet, Aaron murmured. To the nurse, she said, keep track of the pads. I want to count. We do not leave anything inside that we do not mean to. Outside the bay, there was a new sound, faint at first, then louder. A low thrum that was not quite like the wind or the usual city noise. The floor seemed to vibrate under Aaron's feet. She did not look up. In her peripheral vision, she saw Daniel glance toward the ceiling. Flight for life, he asked. Linda, standing near the doorway, shook her head slowly. The sound grew deeper, heavier. Cabinets rattled faintly. A pen rolled on the counter. That is not our bird, Linda said. The noise passed overhead close enough that the fluorescent light fixtures trembled slightly. Someone in the hallway looked up, eyes wide. On the helipad above the 5th floor, a Blackhawk set down with a gust of air that sent snow and grit in all directions. The rotor wash pounded against the rooftop rails. 2 figures in camouflage uniforms ducked under the spinning blades and moved toward the stairwell access. Inside, trauma. Aaron kept her hands on the packs, feeling for any sign that the liver was still oozing around them. The man's abdomen had softened slightly as the pressure relieved some of the buildup. His vitals continued to creep toward something that looked survivable. Bleeding is slowed, she said. We will need to get him to OR for definitive repair as soon as they free a room. I'm not doing a full hepatography in here. You may have bought him the time he needs, Daniel said. That is the idea, she replied. The bay curtain fluttered as someone pushed it aside. 2 soldiers in camouflage stepped in first, eyes scanning the room, hands empty but held with the practiced readiness of people who were armed most of the time. Their uniforms bore no obvious unit patches. Communication earpieces sat snug against their ears. Behind them walked a woman in an Army service uniform, dark blue coat sharp at the shoulders, silver eagles on her collar. Her hair was cut close to her head, shot through with gray at the temples. Her posture suggested she had been standing straight her entire life and saw no reason to stop now. She took in the scene in a glance. The open abdomen, the drapes, the blood. Aaron's hands deep in the field. Captain Walker, she said. The title dropped into the room like a stone into a basin. Aaron looked up briefly. Her eyes met the woman's, then flicked back to the wound. I am busy, Colonel, she said. A corner of the woman's mouth lifted just barely. I can see that, she said. The woman in uniform stepped closer, staying outside the sterile field. The 2 soldiers behind her took up positions near the doorway, backs to the wall, eyes on the room. Finish what you are doing, she said. Then we talk. Her voice carried without being loud. Daniel glanced between Aaron and the newcomer. Who are you? He asked. Colonel Denise Carter, United States Army, she said. Medical Directorate. Daniel blinked. This is a civilian hospital. I noticed, Carter replied. Aaron turned back to the incision. The liver packs in her hands felt heavy with blood. She pressed a fresh pad in, tested the pressure, and listened to the monitor. The numbers held not good, but not falling. Temporary closure, she said. He can survive the trip upstairs now. Does he have to go now? Daniel asked. Aaron considered. She looked at the man's face, waxy but less gray, the slight pink coming back to his lips. He can tolerate transfer if the elevator does not get stuck, she said. Pack count. Rebecca, pale but steady, checked the tally on her sheet. 20 and none out yet. We are not closing his fascia down here, Aaron said. We put in a temporary dressing. Upstairs they can take out the packs, find every last bleeder, and do this properly. She worked fast, placing a sterile sheet over the organs and packs, tucking it into the edges of the incision, then sealing the whole field with a clear adhesive dressing. It was not pretty, but it contained the swelling and would allow for rapid reopening. When she stepped away from the table, she felt the drag of fatigue in her shoulders. Her gloves were slick, the fingertips tinted a rusty brown. She stripped them off and dropped them into the trash, then peeled off the gown. The air on her bare forearms felt cold. Pressure and vitals in the elevator, she said to Rebecca. Keep his head midline. Do not lose track of that blood transfusion. Tell whoever takes over that the packs stay in until they are ready to control every source. Yes, doctor, Rebecca said. Daniel met Aaron's eyes. You bought him time, he said. Use it, she answered. He nodded and moved to the head of the bed as the team prepared to wheel the patient out. Carter stepped aside to let them pass. Her gaze tracked the gurney for a moment, measuring, then returned to Aaron. You still work fast, she said. Aaron wiped her hands with sanitizer more out of habit than need. Her pulse had not slowed yet. She could feel it in her throat. There's a surgical sink upstairs if you want a real scrub, Carter added. We can talk along the way. I need to check on my other patients, Aaron said. Carter's brows lifted a fraction. Your badge is suspended, Captain, she said. The only reason you are in that room is because someone begged you in a crisis. Trust me, you will not be allowed to write an order on the way out. The use of the rank wrapped the words in something harder than annoyance. Aaron looked past Carter toward the main hall. The trauma board at the nurses' station was full of names and room numbers. Nurses moved in and out of bays with the weary precision of people running on duty and coffee. No one was looking toward the office corridor where trouble usually lived. All right, she said. She followed Carter into the hall. The two soldiers fell in behind them. Linda watched them go, her mouth pressed into a thin line. They had not made it far when another voice cut in. What is going on in my department? Dr. Richard Lang strode toward them from the administrative corridor, the knot of his tie slightly off-center, for the first time Aaron could remember. His gaze flicked over the uniforms, then settled on Aaron. You are not supposed to be here, he said. You are suspended. Good afternoon, Dr. Lang, Carter said calmly. I am Colonel Carter with the Army Medical Directorate. I apologize for the disruption. You land a military helicopter on my roof and walk armed personnel through my emergency department, Lang said. Color had risen high in his face. That is more than a disruption. My personnel are unarmed, Carter said. They are here because Captain Walker is being requested for immediate deployment. Lang stared at her. He actually laughed a short, disbelieving sound. Deployment, he repeated. This is not a base. This is a hospital in Denver. She is under review for a major breach in protocol. She does not work here anymore in any meaningful sense. Then you can unsuspend her, Carter said. She reached into a leather folder and took out a tablet, waking the screen with a tap. You have the authority to do that, at least on paper. For the next hour, her authority comes from higher up the ladder than your board of directors. She held the tablet out. On the display, an official-looking document sat under a header with more seals than most people ever saw in one place. Lang read, his eyes moving more quickly at some lines than others. This is a directive from Special Operations Command, Carter said. They are conducting a time-sensitive operation that requires a field trauma surgeon with very specific experience. Captain Walker is the only one in reasonable reach. She is not in the Army anymore, Lang said. She works for Skyline Memorial. Or she did until she jeopardized this institution. She is in the Individual Ready Reserve, Carter replied. Her status allows for recall in exactly this sort of scenario. We are not asking you. We are informing you. She let the words settle, not raising her voice. You cannot simply walk in here and take my staff, Lang said. You cannot drop a helicopter on my roof without clearance. You cannot override an internal suspension because it suits your timetable. Carter's expression did not change. I can, she said, and I did. If you have concerns, you are welcome to raise them with the Joint Chiefs. They will be delighted to explain the difference between a suggestion and an order. The hall had grown quieter. A few nurses had found reasons to move more slowly past their ears, tuned to the conversation. Someone at the far end pretended to check a supply cabinet and did not move away. Lang's mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, his composure slipped into something like uncertainty. "You do not understand the liability," he said. "You do not understand the stakes," Carter said. "We have 4 American citizens held in a location that will not stay stable for long. We lost our last field surgeon to an improvised explosive device 2 days ago. There are very few people on Earth who can do what Captain Walker does under those conditions. You happen to employ one." Her gaze shifted to Aaron for a moment, then back to Lang. "You can either be the administrator who facilitated her getting to where she is needed," Carter said, "or the one who tried to block it." Lang looked at Aaron as if he might find support there. Her face did not offer any. "You are putting me in an impossible position," he said. "Impossible is a word people use when they do not like their options," Carter said. "You have a helicopter on your roof, Doctor. I suggest you use the time it buys you." Lang glanced once more at the tablet, then exhaled through his nose. "Fine," he said. "For the purposes of your directive, she is unsuspended. As of now, she is released from all duties here. If this blows back on us, it is on you." "We will make sure the paperwork reflects that," Carter said. She took the tablet back and gestured toward the stairwell. "Roof access." Lang watched as Aaron and Carter moved past him, flanked by the silent soldiers. He did not try to stop them again. The stairs to the roof were narrow and utilitarian concrete, and steel that had not seen paint in years. Aaron climbed behind Carter, her hand grazing the cool rail. The thrum of the rotors grew louder with each level of physical presence that settled into her bones. On the roof, the air hit them hard and cold. The sky was a low ceiling of gray. The Black Hawk sat in the middle of the pad rotors, spinning at idle blades ablur. Snow swirled in the wash, sweeping against their legs. Carter stood with her hands clasped behind her back for a moment, watching the helicopter. Then she turned to Aaron. "You left without saying goodbye," she said. "I left because I was done," Aaron answered. Carter studied her face. There were new lines that had not been there in Afghanistan, a shadow at the eyes that came from long nights in brightly lit rooms. "You were the best combat trauma surgeon in special operations," Carter said. "People said you could find a bleeder with your eyes closed in a blackout tent." "A lot of people said a lot of things," Aaron said. "Some of them died anyway." The wind tugged at their clothes. The soldiers stayed near the stairwell door, giving them a bubble of space without being obvious about it. "What happened at Arrowhead was not on you," Carter said. Aaron looked past her toward the mountains where the clouds stacked in heavy layers. For a moment, the sound of the rotors became another sound entirely. The crack of incoming rounds, the rush of air as a wall of canvas collapsed. "I was the senior surgeon, Saul," she said. "I said we could finish the case before the strike hit. I said we had time." She swallowed. The air tasted like cold metal and something older. "Intel said we had 20 minutes, she went on. "We were at 14. The mortar landed on the tent at 15. Logan caught shrapnel in the neck and bled out before we could clamp anything. Tasha was under the support beam. We could not move it without bringing down the rest of the structure." Her voice had gone quiet. The rotor noise faded to a muffled thud behind the memory. "Ben lost both legs," she said. "We got him onto a bird. He made it to Germany. He died 3 days later from sepsis and multi-organ failure. Kyle was in the supply section when the second round hit. They found him after the fire was out. He was 23. He had a wedding date picked out." She stopped. Her jaw had tightened so hard it hurt. "I walked out of that crater with all my limbs attached," she said. "Half deaf and full of other people's blood, but alive. They pinned a medal on me for the ones we did save. The citation does not mention the 4 we did not." Carter listened without interrupting. When Aaron finished, she let the silence sit between them for a moment. The helicopter's engine filled it steady and patient. "You know how many names I have on a board in my office because of you?" Carter asked. 47. That is the number we have confirmed as saves under fire, not counting the ones you trained who went on to save more. Her gaze did not waver. "You wrote protocols that other teams still use," she said. "You taught techniques that got passed along base to base until they became standard practice. You built something out there that did not die in that crater." "It does not feel like enough," Aaron said. "It never feels like enough," Carter said. "That is why people like you are any good at this. You always think you owe one more." She shifted her weight, boots, scraping on the textured surface of the pad. "We can talk about guilt all day," she said. "Or we can talk about the problem I flew here with." Aaron's shoulders tightened. "The hostages," she said. Carter nodded. 4 American citizens, she said. 2 aid workers, 1 engineer, 1 journalist. They were grabbed 6 weeks ago by a group that splintered off from a larger outfit we do not need to name on a rooftop. She took a folded map from her pocket and opened it, holding it down against the wind with her hand and a small metal clip. "This is the region," she said, tapping a point in the Sahel with her finger. "Nearest surgical facility with blood products and an actual operating room is more than an hour away by air, and that is on a calm day." She indicated another mark. "This is Camp Horizon, our forward staging site. We have a team there, but no surgeon now. Our last one died on the road to the nearest airfield when his convoy hit an improvised device." Erin's eyes moved over the lines and symbols. The names were just shapes on paper, but she could feel the distances. "What is the timeline?" she asked. "Rescue window is within the next 36 hours, Carter said. "After that, we have credible intelligence. The hostages will be moved or killed." She folded the map again, precise and crisp. "The assault team is ready," she said. "They will not move without medical support. They should not. I will not sign that line without a field surgeon on site." "And you think I am the answer?" Erin said. "I know you are," Carter said. "There are a handful of people with your combination of skills and experience. Most of them are either on other missions or halfway around the world. You are here." Erin looked at the helicopter at the open door where a crew chief sat with one foot on the skid headset on watching them. "I got out," she said. "I did my time. I signed my papers. I moved my life into an apartment with regular walls." "You went to work in another place where people bleed," Carter said. "You did not go sell insurance. Do not pretend you do not know why." The wind gusted, carrying the smell of jet fuel and snow. "I am tired," Erin said. "I am tired of tents and rotors and metal and thinking in 20-second increments. I am tired of writing letters to families." "You think I'm not tired?" Carter asked. There was a flash in her eyes now, something like anger but sharper. "That I have not stood where you are and counted the names that did not make it home. I still show up. So do you." She let the words settle. When she spoke again, her tone had softened by a shade. "I am not asking you to sign up for another tour," she said. "I am asking you for 48 hours of what you already know how to do. Then you can come back here and argue with administrators to your heart's content." 48 hours, Erin repeated. Carter nodded. "You have my word, in writing if you insist." Erin thought of the girl in Trauma 3, breathing through a tube placed by hands that had learned the motion in a tent far from Denver. She thought of Marcus Hill in the cafeteria, fingers shaking as he lifted his shirt. She thought of the faces in the photograph on her shelf, some alive only because someone had once said yes to something that felt unbearable. She let out a slow breath. 48 hours, she said. "Then I'm done. You do not call me again." "If I'm lucky, I will not have to," Carter said, "but I will take what I can get." She gestured to the crew chief, who gave a thumbs up and slid off the skid. "You have 10 minutes to grab what you need," Carter said. "We have a hop to an airbase outside town, then a flight to Ramstein. From there, straight to Camp Horizon." "I do not have anything to pack," Erin said. She looked down at her scrubs, still carrying faint stains at the hem. "This is it." Carter studied her for a second, then nodded. "Fine," she said. "We will find you a duffel on the way." They ducked under the spinning blades and climbed into the Blackhawk. Inside, the noise rose from loud to all-consuming. Erin strapped into a web seat, fingers finding the buckles almost without looking. The headset a crew member handed her sat snug against her ears. Across from her, Carter clipped in and put on her own. Her voice came through a moment later, filtered and clear. "You did not ask about the risk," she said. "I assume there is some," Erin replied. "There always is," Carter said. "The team going in is good. Very good. The plan is solid. The enemy can read too." The helicopter lifted. The roof of Skyline dropped away, the helipad shrinking the lines of the hospital sliding under them. Through the open door, Erin saw the parking structure, the rows of cars, the place where her Subaru sat with boxes in the trunk. The city spread out, lights flickering on as afternoon leaned toward evening. Roads traced pale lines through the snow. Far to the west, the mountains stood dark against the sky. Erin felt the familiar press of the harness across her chest, the vibration of the airframe under her boots. Her stomach did a small, weightless flip as they banked. Inside her, another feeling stirred. It started low in her gut and moved up, not quite adrenaline, not quite dread. It was the shape of an old roll sliding back into place, the awareness of timelines and contingencies of blood types and evacuation routes. She closed her eyes for a moment and counted her breath. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. When she opened them again, the city was already smaller. Hours later, on a military transport crossing an ocean, the air was thick with the smell of metal and recycled breath. Erin sat on a canvas bench along the side of the cargo hold. Across from her, members of the assault team checked their gear in silent routines. Weapons lay in racks. Medics sorted bags of supplies, tubing, bandages, vials. Carter sat a little distance away, bent over a tablet, reviewing briefs. The engine noise laid a steady blanket over everything. Erin opened a duffel that might once have belonged to someone else and checked her own tools. She ran her fingers over the familiar shapes: clamps, suture, a headlamp, a roll of tape. Somewhere ahead, in a place she had not yet seen, 4 people waited in rooms that were not rooms, certain only of the fear that came each day they woke and found themselves still there. The aircraft trembled as it hit a pocket of turbulence, then smoothed out again. The vibrations climbed into her bones. She flexed her hands once, then stilled them in her lap. The hum of the engines filled her ears, steady and unbroken. 52 hours later, Erin pushed through the revolving door of Skyline Memorial again. The lobby air felt too warm after the cold outside. It smelled of floor wax and coffee and the faint, sour trace of too many people in one place. Her borrowed scrubs, a shade of green that did not match the hospital's usual ones, held onto the scent of disinfectant sweat and the recycled air of military transports. Her body ached with the kind of fatigue that did not live only in muscles. Her eyes burned. Her hair was still damp at the ends from a quick shower taken in a concrete room at an airbase. The duffel Carter's people had handed her felt heavier than it should, bumping against her leg as she walked. She expected to see the lobby the way it usually was at 6 a.m, a scattered handful of people, a couple of early visitors, security at the desk with a clipboard. Instead, the space was full. Doctors in scrubs and white coats, nurses in different colors and patterns, transport techs in navy polos, a few people in street clothes she recognized as unit clerks, even a patient or two in wheelchairs, blankets over their laps of U-poles tucked close. They all stood facing the doors. For a second, Erin thought she had made a mistake, that there must be someone behind her, someone of actual importance. She started to turn. Then she saw the banner. It hung from the second-floor railing, drooping a little in the middle. The letters had been painted by hand in uneven blue and red. Some of them ran together where too much paint had been used. "Welcome back, Dr. Walker." The words did not quite fit in her head. "She is here," someone said. The crowd shifted. A path opened without anyone seeming to direct it. Dr. Daniel Liu stepped forward from the front line. His hair was combed for once, though one cowlick still refused to lie flat. He had dark circles under his eyes and a smile that looked like it hurt a little to hold. "Erin," he said. She stopped a few feet from him, the duffel hanging at her side. "You look terrible," he said. "You are one to talk," she answered. He laughed once, a breath, more than a sound, then his face sobered. "We owe you an apology," he said. "No," she replied immediately. The word came easily. "You do not." "Yes," he said. He glanced around at the others, then back at her. "We do." Several nurses had moved closer. Linda stood near the front, her arms folded, eyes bright. Naomi lingered a little to the side, taking everything in. "We judged you," Daniel said. "We let rumors and a few lines on a form decide who you were. We let protocol matter more than what you were actually doing at the bedside." His voice stayed low, but the room was quiet enough that it carried. "You are not just a good doctor," he said. "You are someone who has done this in the worst conditions imaginable, who brought all of that here, and we treated you as if you were a problem to be managed." Erin shifted her weight. The strap of the duffel cut into her shoulder. She could feel eyes on her from every angle. "I am not a hero," she said. It came out reflexive. Linda stepped forward, then breaking the line. "You are the person who puts holes in the right chests and opens the right bellies when everyone else is still arguing," she said, which on several occasions has been the only reason some folks in this building kept breathing long enough to complain. Her gaze softened as she looked at Erin. "My grandson was on that bus," she said. Erin blinked. "Leo," she said. The name surfaced through the haze. The forehead lack. "He was in the back row," Linda said. "His best friend was the girl in Trauma 3. The image clicked, the small body on the stretcher, the gray lips, the hiss of air rushing past her fingers. "If you had not done what you did," Linda said, "my grandson would have lost his friend before he even lost his baby teeth." Her throat worked as if the words hurt to say. "I am not going to pretend I understand what you have done before this place," she went on. "I just know what you did here, and it matters." Erin swallowed. There was a pinch at the bridge of her nose, a tightening at the back of her eyes. She looked away for a moment, toward the far wall, where a vending machine blinked its green light. Around them, more people stepped forward in ones and twos. A nurse from nights who had watched the Torsades code, a respiratory therapist who had helped on the pileup. Rebecca, cheeks pink, clutching the strap of her own bag. "You let me stand in that laparotomy with you," Rebecca said. "I was terrified. You did not make me feel stupid for it." "You saved that man," a tech said. "The one with the busted liver. They said if you had not opened him downstairs, he would have never made it upstairs." Erin did not have words for all of that. She let them speak, let the tide of their voices roll around her. Her body swayed not from emotion so much as from the accumulated weight of too many hours on too little sleep. After a while, the noise shifted. People began to drift back. The day shift had to start. Patients were not going to stop bleeding because someone important to them had come back through the door. The crowd thinned until only a loose knot of people remained. Naomi moved closer, the others giving way around her. "You made it back," she said. "For now," Aaron said. Naomi's gaze flicked over her face, taking in the smudges under her eyes, the faint line of a taped cut on her forearm she had almost forgotten about. "How many?" Naomi asked quietly. Aaron knew what she meant. 4 hostages, Aaron said. 3 of ours, all alive. Naomi nodded once. "Good," she said. "That is good." A throat cleared behind them. "Dr. Walker," the voice was Lang's. He stood near the edge of the group, his usual composed posture a little frayed. He had no tie on. His shirt sleeves were rolled to mid-forearm as if someone had convinced him that was what you did when things were informal. "May I speak with you?" he asked. For a second, Aaron thought of saying no, of walking around him out the door into whatever the day held that did not contain his office. In the end, she just said, "All right." They moved through the halls together. The route felt like a path she had walked in a different lifetime when she had first come to Skyline. Past the stairwell, past the quiet waiting area, into the corridor that led to administration, where the air always ran a couple of degrees cooler. Lang's office looked the same as it had the last time she had stood there. The blinds angled just so, the stacks of folders aligned at the corners. A framed picture of his family on the shelf, faces turned toward the camera in practiced smiles. This time he gestured to the chair. "Please," he said. "Sit." She set the duffel down near the door and sat on the edge of the chair, hands resting on her knees. Lang walked behind the desk and sat as well. For a moment, he only looked at her as if arranging his thoughts into some order he could live with. "I was wrong," he said. The words came out without qualifiers. He seemed to hear that and nodded once as if agreeing with himself. "I prioritized our exposure to liability over our exposure to death and disability," he said. "I treated your actions as recklessness when in context they were something else entirely." He folded his hands together on the desk. "I did not understand who you were," he said. "I did not make the effort to find out. That is on me." He reached for a folder on the corner of his desk and slid it toward her. The cover bore her name. "In light of recent events, the board convened an emergency session," he said. "They reviewed the information that has come to light regarding your military service. They reviewed the outcomes of the cases involved in your suspension, including the bus incident and the crash laparotomy." He nodded toward the folder. "They have dropped the review," he said. "The suspension is lifted. The record of it remains because paperwork has a long memory, but the disciplinary action does not." Aaron let her fingers rest on the edge of the folder without opening it. "Is that all?" she asked. "No," he said. Some of the tension around his eyes eased as if they had finally reached the part he preferred. "We would like to offer you a full attending position in trauma surgery," he said. "Officially. Not tucked into night shifts and supply rooms. Full privileges in the operating room. Authority in the emergency department to match what you are already doing in reality." He spoke the next part more slowly. "And he added, we would like you to take on a new role, Director of Emergency Readiness." The title sounded slightly inflated, like a balloon that needed someone to decide how much air it should have. "What does that mean?" Aaron asked. "It means we are going to change some things," Lang said. "The events of the last week have made it clear that our current structure, while safe on paper, is brittle in practice." He leaned back slightly, the chair creaking a little. "We are calling it the Walker Protocol for now," he said. "A framework for how this hospital responds to critical situations." He ticked off points on his fingers, not in a list, so much as in a way to keep himself anchored to specifics. "Peer review for critical decisions," he said. "Not just attending physicians talking to each other behind closed doors. Nurses, residents, techs. They all get a say when something feels off. Authority to deviate from protocol when the situation demands," he went on, "not carte blanche, structured flexibility, documented reasoning. Recognition that experience gained outside traditional civilian pathways has value," he added. "Military disaster response field medicine. Those backgrounds will be sought out instead of quietly filed away." He looked at her. "In short, we would like to build a system where we do not sideline people like you," he said. "Where we listen when someone knows what they are talking about, even if their resume does not fit our usual template." The hum of the building pressed through the walls. Somewhere a printer started up the whir and clatter oddly loud in the pause. "You want to name it after me?" Aaron said. "That seems unnecessary." "It is not about the name," Lang said. "It is about acknowledging that these changes do not come from a committee's imagination. They come from what you have lived and done." He watched her for a moment. "I cannot change the way I reacted before," he said. "I can only make different choices now. This is one of them." Aaron looked down at the folder again. Her name sat there, black ink on a white tab. There was room under it for new labels. "I do not want special treatment," she said. "This is not special," he said. "This is overdue." She considered that. Her fingers tapped a slow rhythm against her knee. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold. 1, 2. Release. I will think about it, she said. Relief flickered across his features, subtle but present. That is all I ask, he said. Take the time you need. She picked up the folder and stood. The duffel felt lighter when she lifted it, though she knew it was not. At the door, she paused. The man from Trauma 2, she said. The one with the liver laceration. How is he? A small smile crossed Lang's face, one that did not reach for any audience. In step down, he said. Stabilizing. Dr. Liu took him back to the OR once they had a room. They found a small bowel tear just where you suggested it might be. He said if you had not warned him, they might have missed it until sepsis set in. Erin nodded once, a small motion. Good, she said. She stepped into the hallway. The air felt warmer on this side of the door. Naomi waited a few yards down, leaning against the wall with her arms folded, as if she had known that was where Erin would come out. She straightened when she saw the folder in Erin's hand. So, Naomi said, did you get fired for good this time or promoted? Something like the second one, Erin said. Naomi's eyes flicked to the name tab, then back to Erin's face. He wants you to fix his hospital, Naomi said. That is a lot to drop on someone who just got off a plane from a war zone. It's not a war zone, Erin said. Naomi gave her a look. You know what I mean? Erin's mouth curved, not quite a smile, but closer than it had been in days. He offered me a job, she said. I told him I would think about it. That is not a no, Naomi said. It is not a yes either, Erin replied. No, Naomi agreed. It is not. They began to walk back toward the emergency department side by side. The familiar hum grew louder with each step. Ahead, the doors to the trauma bay stood open, a rectangle of light. Erin could hear the sounds already. Voices, monitors, the ordinary chaos of another day. 6 months later, the conference room felt different. The fluorescent panels still buzzed, the coffee still tasted burned, the chairs still wobbled if you leaned too far back. But every seat was taken. Residents stood along the walls, backs pressed to the glass tablets in hand. Erin sat at the main table now, not in the last row. On her left, Daniel flipped through a stack of printed labs. On her right, Naomi scrolled on her phone until the meeting started, then tucked it into her pocket. At the front, Lang adjusted his glasses and clicked the remote. The Skyline logo appeared on the screen, then vanished, replaced by a slide titled 6-Month Metrics. All right, he said. Let us get to it. He did not clear his throat. He did not ramble. He went straight to the numbers. Since implementing the Walker Protocol in trauma and emergency services, we have seen a 32% reduction in preventable surgical errors, he said. A murmur moved across the room. Not surprise exactly. More like confirmation of something people had felt in their bones. Patient satisfaction scores are up across the board, he continued, not just in the standard food and parking questions, but in perceived communication and trust. He clicked again. A graph appeared, lines trending upward. Staff retention in the emergency department has improved, he said. We are losing fewer nurses and residents to burnout or transfers. When we asked why, the most common answer was that they feel heard, and that when they speak up in critical situations, someone listens. Erin felt Naomi's gaze slide her way for a heartbeat, then back to the front. In the last 6 months, Lang said, there were 14 documented instances where non-attending staff identified an issue in a high-risk case that the attending had missed or underweighted. In all 14, the concern was reviewed in real time. In all 14, corrective action was taken before harm occurred. He let his hand drop to his side. This hospital is safer because we stopped pretending authority always lines up with insight, he said. We are better because we have learned to value competence over title, results over ego. The sentence sat there for a moment. Erin watched him as he spoke. He did not glance her way while he said it. That felt important in a small, quiet way. He clicked through the remaining slides, touching briefly on flu admissions, bed availability, budget variances. The usual grind reclaimed the room for a bit. When the meeting ended, chairs scraped and people stood. Clusters formed near the coffee urn. A couple of interns whispered in the back about a tough attending. Someone laughed at something too loudly and then covered their mouth. Erin stood and gathered her notes. Daniel reached past her to snag another bagel half, then thought better of it and decided the effort was not worth the chew. Rounds, he asked. Rounds, she said. They stepped out into the hallway with Naomi falling in beside them. A trio of residents trailed a few steps behind their eyes, alert in that way new doctors had when they knew they might be called on to speak at any moment. The emergency department was already in motion. The morning shift had slid in around the night like gears. Beds were full but not overflowing. The whiteboard held a manageable number of names. All right, Erin said to the residents. We will start in Bay 5. Let us see if anyone has managed to hurt themselves in a new way. The patient in Bay 5 was an older woman with a suspected bowel obstruction. She lay propped up on pillows, lines of discomfort etched around her mouth, one hand resting protectively over her abdomen. Dr. Chen, Aaron said to the nearest resident, a young man with dark hair and a habit of pushing his glasses up when he was thinking. Present the case. He did halting in places, his explanation solid, but a little too focused on lab values and CT findings. What is your plan? Aaron asked when he finished. CT to confirm the obstruction surgical consult for possible intervention, he said. Before that, Aaron said. He frowned slightly. More labs. Before that, she repeated. He opened his mouth, closed it, then glanced at the monitor. Adjust her fluids, he tried. Talk to her, Aaron said. The resident blinked. You should probably tell her what you think is going on before you order a scan that involves a machine bigger than this room, she said. Ask her how long it has hurt. Ask what she is afraid of. She has been here 3 hours, and you have not spoken to her yet, have you? Color rose in his face. I have been reviewing her chart, he said. Charts do not get scared, Aaron said. People do. The woman on the bed watched the exchange, eyes shifting between them. Aaron stepped closer to her, lowering her voice. Mrs. Alvarez, she said, glancing at the chart. I am Dr. Walker. Has anyone explained what we are thinking yet? Mrs. Alvarez shook her head. I am sorry for that, Aaron said. We see signs that your intestines might not be moving the way they should. It can be painful and dangerous if we do not treat it. We are going to get images to see exactly where the problem is. She laid a hand lightly on the rail, not touching the patient, but close enough that if the woman reached out, she would not find empty air. In the meantime, Aaron said, if your pain gets worse or you feel more bloated, you tell us all right. We are not going to let this sit and hope it fixes itself. Mrs. Alvarez's shoulders eased a fraction. Thank you, she said. When they left the bay, the resident walked beside Aaron, pushing his glasses up. I should have talked to her first, he said. You will remember next time, Aaron said. He nodded, chastened but not crushed. That was the line she tried to walk. Rounds wound through the department, a man with a broken ankle from slipping on ice, a teenager with appendicitis trying to act less scared than he was, a woman withdrawing from alcohol who shook when anyone raised their voice. At each bed, Aaron let the resident speak first. When they stumbled, she guided. When they missed something, she pointed it out without tearing them down. Now and then she took a moment to show a grip, a way of palpating an abdomen without causing unnecessary pain, a trick for finding a vein that was hiding. Naomi joined in when it made sense, dropping in comments from a trauma surgeon's vantage point, questions about mechanism and pattern. In Bay 12, Leo sat up on the mattress, a thin scar now barely visible under his hairline. He grinned when he saw Aaron. You came back, he said. I did, she said. How is the head? He puffed himself up a little. Fine, I got a scar. Show off, the nurse at his side said. Aaron reached up and ruffled his hair gently, avoiding the line of the scar. Try to keep the rest of your skull intact, all right, she said. He nodded solemnly and then broke into a grin again. By late afternoon, the major fires had been put out. The waiting room thinned. The constant high-pitched alarms faded to the occasional yelp. Aaron finished signing a set of orders at the nurse's station and straightened. The edges of her fatigue had softened into something manageable. The day had done the thing days did when they did not explode. They had simply passed. I'm going to check on Step Down, she told Daniel. Make sure our liver guy is still thanking us by living. Tell him he owes you flowers, Daniel said without looking up from his screen. Tell him yourself, she said. She took the stairs instead of the elevator more out of habit than preference. Her knees objected a little on the last flight. The man from trauma, two lay in a bed near the window in step-down monitors, quietly ticking. A purple bruise spread across his abdomen where the incision had been reopened and closed again with more care and time. He was awake, eyes clear. How do you feel? Aaron asked. Like I got hit by a truck, he said. They tell me I actually got hit by a car. Sometimes the car wins, she said. Sometimes you do. He gave a small, grateful smile. Dr. Liu said you cut me open downstairs, he said. In the ER, is that true? It was the only room available, she said. Thank you, he said. He said it simply. You are welcome, she replied, and meant it without discomfort. As she left Step Down and headed back toward the elevators, her phone buzzed. A text from Carter. Made it back to DC. Debrief went as well as those things ever do. Heard about your new title. Proud of you, Captain. Aaron stared at the words for a moment, then typed back. Thank you, and it is just Aaron now. The reply came faster than she expected. Not to me, some things you earn forever. She slipped the phone back into her pocket. Later, as the sky outside dimmed from gray to the washed-out purple of early evening, Aaron walked out to the parking structure. Her shift was technically over. Daniel had waved her out with a promise to call if something exploded. Naomi had made a face at that phrasing, but did not argue. The air in the garage hit her cool and a little damp. A few cars pulled out, tires splashing through shallow puddles. Somewhere a horn chirped twice. She walked toward her Subaru, keys in hand. The concrete under her boots felt solid. Halfway there, a familiar sound slid into the space above the hum of the city. Helicopter blades chopping the air, rotating through the frequencies she knew too well. The sound bounced off the concrete pillars and curled down into the lower levels. She stopped and looked up. A medevac chopper in Skyline's white and orange livery rose from the pad nose, tilting as it banked toward the mountains. The lights on its belly blinked, the rotors blurred against the sky. The vibration reached her chest gentle compared to the pounding on the helipad weeks before. It did not punch through her. It sat on her sternum and then passed. She stood there and listened until the sound faded into the rest of the evening noise. Her hands were steady at her sides, her breathing stayed even. In, 1, 2, 3, 4, hold, 1, 2. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not to fight anything back, just to feel the air move. She unlocked the car and got in. On the passenger seat, the folder from Lang's office rested beside a small, worn picture frame she had finally brought in from home. The photograph inside showed 5 figures in desert uniforms, squinting in hard light, laughing at something the camera had not captured. The crack in the glass was still there. It cut across Logan's face. It did not obscure his smile. Erin touched the edge of the frame lightly, then set it upright where she could see it. She started the engine. The dash lights came up in soft green. The hum of the hospital, the city, the rotor blades all blended into one long, low note behind the glass. 2 weeks later, the lecture hall at the university hospital filled one slow row at a time. Third-year medical students drifted in with backpacks slung over one shoulder and laptops under their arms. They chose seats in clusters, whispering trading notes about exams and rotations. The air smelled faintly of dust coffee and the plastic of new badge holders. At the front, a projector hummed. A slide waited on the screen, trauma surgery lessons from the field. The name beneath read, Erin Walker, MD. Erin stood at the podium, adjusting the small microphone clipped to the collar of her shirt. She had traded scrubs for a simple dark blazer and a white blouse. Her hair was pulled back in a low knot. A faint line still marked the inside of one forearm where a piece of equipment at Camp Horizon had left its opinion. Naomi sat in the front row by the aisle, hands folded around a travel mug. She had bullied the education committee into scheduling this lecture and had no intention of missing it. A few students recognized Erin from their trauma rotation and nudged their classmates. One whispered, "That is her," with a note of awe usually reserved for surgeons from journal articles. When the room had mostly settled, the coordinator in the corner nodded to Erin. She looked out over the sea of faces, young, tired, determined, some excited, some already on their way to cynical. She remembered sitting where they were thinking she understood more than she did. "Good afternoon," she said. The murmur quieted. Screens dimmed as laptops closed. "I am Dr. Erin Walker," she went on. "I work in the emergency department and trauma service at Skyline Memorial just down the street." That much most of them knew. "What you have learned so far," she said, "is how things are supposed to go." A few smiles flickered. "You have algorithms and flowcharts," she said. "You know what the latest guidelines say you should do for a given heart rate, a given lab value, a given pattern on a scan." She let her gaze move from row to row. "All of that matters," she said. "You cannot improvise safely if you do not know what you are stepping away from." She rested her hands lightly on the sides of the podium. "I am here to tell you something that does not usually make it into the syllabus," she said. "Skill is not enough. Knowledge is not enough. None of it matters if you do not have the courage to use it when you need to." The room quieted another degree. Even the students who had been half checked out leaned in a little. "I have worked in hospitals with more resources than you will ever need," she said. "And I have worked in tents with a single table and a generator that only stayed on if someone kicked it every half hour." A ripple of quiet laughter ran through the front rows. "In both places," she said, "patients can die because people are afraid to act, because everyone is waiting for the next person up the chain to say it is all right." She paused. "You will have moments," and she said, "when everything you were taught points one way and what you see in front of you points another. When the attending is stuck in another room, when the protocol says wait but the patient in front of you is running out of time." Her voice remained even. It carried the weight of experience without dramatics. "In those moments," she said, "you have to decide who you are." At the back, a student shifted in his seat. In the middle rows, someone clicked a pen once and then went very still. "I am not telling you to throw away guidelines," she said. "They exist because someone somewhere sweated and failed and learned until they could write them down. I am telling you that there will be times when guidelines are too slow." She clicked the remote. A slide appeared with a familiar image, a simple diagram of a chest and the path of a tube into the pleural space. "A few months ago," she said, "a 10-year-old girl came into our emergency department after a bus crash. She had a tension pneumothorax. Her oxygen saturation was in the 70s. Her blood pressure was dropping. A resident was at the bedside with the chest tube kit open. His hands were shaking. She did not name him. She did not need to. I was assigned to a different patient, she said. A boy with a cut on his forehead that looked impressive and was not. That boy would have been fine if I had sat and held his hand for an hour. The girl would not have. She let the slide go dark again. There was no time to wait for another attending, she said. No time to call a committee. There was time to place a tube. She lifted her hand palm facing down, fingers slightly curled. I chose to put my hand on her chest, she said. I chose to act. She did not tell them about the suspension in that room. That was another lesson, one they might learn later. A hand went up in the front row. Aaron nodded to the student. What if you are wrong? The young woman asked. What if you go against your attending or against protocol and the patient dies anyway? The question hung in the air. Aaron held it there for a beat. Then you live with it, she said. You learn from it if you can. You do better next time. She took a breath. The alternative, she said quietly, is doing nothing when you know you could have done something. That stays with you in a different way. Somewhere in the second row, a student sat a little straighter, as if the words had landed on something already raw. After the lecture, a cluster of students came down to the front to ask follow-up questions, to thank her, to tell her about family members they had seen go through trauma. Erin answered what she could, redirected what needed redirecting, and did not pretend to have answers she did not. One student hung back until the others had drifted away. She looked to be around 25, with close-cropped hair and a posture that looked more familiar than academic. Dr. Walker, she said. I am Lydia Martinez. Erin's mouth twitched. The name brushed against an old memory that carried a different Martinez entirely. Lydia, she said. What can I do for you? I am prior service, Lydia said. Army medic, 2 deployments. She spoke in bursts, as if she had rehearsed this and did not want to lose the thread. I am in my 3rd year now, she said. On my rotations, I move faster than some of my classmates. I see things I recognize from the field. When I speak up, some attendings tell me I am too aggressive, that I need to slow down and follow the process. Her eyes dropped for a moment. It feels like they do not trust what I know, she said. Because it did not come from residency. Erin studied her. The tension in the set of her shoulders, the way her hands opened and closed at her sides, were painfully familiar. Your experience matters, Erin said. Lydia looked up. What you learned out there is not a deficit, Erin said. It is an asset. You know what happens when you wait too long. You know what it looks like when things are about to go bad before the numbers catch up. A small, quick inhale. Do not let anyone convince you that what you have survived counts less than what they have read, Erin said. Listen. Learn. But do not erase yourself to make other people comfortable. Lydia's eyes shone. She blinked hard. And if the place you are in does not see that, Erin added, find one that does. A small smile tugged at Lydia's mouth. You make it sound simple, she said. It is not, Erin said. But it is possible. Lydia nodded. Thank you, she said. Really. She turned and walked up the aisle. At the door, she looked back once. Erin lifted a hand in acknowledgement. Lydia vanished into the stream of students outside. Naomi appeared at Erin's shoulder a moment later. You have got a fan, she said. It's not about that, Erin replied. I know, Naomi said. That is why they listen. They stepped out into the hallway together. Late afternoon light slanted in through tall windows, throwing long shapes across the floor. The city outside was moving into evening. Cars flowed along the streets. People hurried along the sidewalks, collars turned up against the lingering chill. It looked like any other day from this angle. When Erin got home that night, her apartment no longer looked like a place someone might leave at a moment's notice. A bookcase had found its way against one wall, filled with medical texts, a few novels, and a couple of photography collections that had nothing to do with medicine. A plant with broad green leaves sat on the windowsill, reaching toward the light. A second chair had joined the first at the small table, mismatched but functional. On the wall above the table, 3 frames hung in a rough line. One held the cracked photograph from Arrowhead. The others held newer images. In one, the emergency department staff crowded together in front of the trauma bay, some mid-laugh, some rolling their eyes. In another, Leo and his friend stood in front of a school bus, both holding up thumbs, a faint white line just visible at the edge of his hairline. Her phone buzzed on the counter, a text from Linda. My grandson says he wants to be a doctor. Says he wants to be like you. Thought you should know. Erin leaned against the counter and smiled. It was a small thing, but it settled in her chest in a way that felt solid. Tell him it is hard, she typed, and worth it. She set the phone down and crossed to the window. The city lights had come up, dots of yellow and white scattered across the dark. Far off, a siren wailed, then faded. Somewhere, a helicopter moved above it, all its lights blinking its sound faint through the glass. She rested her forehead lightly against the cool pane and closed her eyes. In, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 1, 2. Out, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Her shoulders loosened. The knot she used to carry just under her breastbone did not vanish, but it no longer ruled the space. Behind her on the wall, Logan and Tasha and Ben and Kyle smiled out of another time frozen in sun and dust. The crack in the glass drew a thin, pale line across them, but it did not erase them. It did not erase her standing among them. "I am still here," she said softly, not turning. "Still working. Still trying to get people home." The hum of the building answered low and steady. The refrigerator motor kicked on. Somewhere down the hall, a neighbor's door closed. Erin opened her eyes and looked out over the lights again. Somewhere in those streets, people were being hurt, getting sick, making mistakes, getting lucky. Somewhere, nurses and doctors and medics were leaning over beds, making choices in real time. She was part of that, had been for a long time, would be as long as her hands could still hold a clamp, and her voice could still cut through noise. She pushed away from the window and turned back into the room. The table waited with an open notebook on it, pages ready for whatever came next. There was time to eat, to sleep, to show up in the morning and start again. For the first time in years, the thought did not feel like a sentence. It felt like an offer. She breathed in once more, slow and steady, and let it go. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. If this story resonated with you or made you reflect, I'd love to hear your thoughts. So feel free to share them in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.